Shariah Dunwell, and the title of my performance is The Great Migration, Exploration in a New World. I'm going to start off with my thesis. At the end of the Reconstruction period, Southern African Americans experienced racism, oppression at the hands of the white community. African Americans were violently maintained in a subordinate position racially, economically, and socially. Seeking opportunity and equity, African Americans began to explore northern cities such as Chicago, Detroit, and Harlem. In the South, they encountered violence, racism, and lack of rights, preventing them from being active members of society. After African Americans had migrated north, the exchange of ideas and space and culture caused tension between them and the races that led to violent encounters, but later brought unity between the two.
Okay. Just slow down and just enjoy it, okay?
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sally Mae, and I'm from the good old South, Jackson, Mississippi. Now, I was born on March 14th, 1903. I grew up a happy life with two parents, my mom and dad, and my two brothers, but I hadn't seen them in a long time. My mom was the most important person to me because she taught me that if I could do anything if I put my mind to it. She was a mixed breed of a child, though. Her mama was raped by a slave master sometime during the Civil War. The first thing that my dad noticed about my mama was her caramel skin, not like the rest of the girls. He knew how much better it was to be light. Lighter folk were always the house slaves while the darker ones worked on the field. Being light was better because you were this much closer to being white. They even had ads and stuff for the creams that made it so that they would be lighter just like everyone else. Now, my dad, he was a sharecropper. Sharecropping is a system where a landowner allows a tenant to use the land for agriculture like kind, in return for a share of the crops produced on their portion of the land. But sharecropping was a dirty system. My dad didn't get no education past level 3, so he could read and write okay, but it wasn't enough. Now me, I got up to level 8, as high as I could in Mississippi. The owner didn't think that my dad could read and write, so he'd always cheat my dad out of the money that he earned. And my dad ended up in debt for years and years and had to work on that field till the day that he died. He was trapped working on that farm forever. Now, when I was little, I would help him, and I would never forget the hours and hours of picking that cotton candy-like substance that brought so much misery to my family. Now, in my town, most of the people did sharecropping, just like my dad. The church system began to fall in the South during my time. Ministers weren't always very educated, just like my Minister Williams. But women helped keep the church together. But they ran the choirs and the Sunday school. They kept the church going strong, strengthening our sense of community and nurtured the hope in the face of discrimination and the violence that we faced. We were like family because we would all pray to God and praise Jesus that we'd be able to get through the things that was handed at us. But me, I prayed for something different. I didn't want to live in the South no more because I knew that it was never going to get any better. So I wanted to go up north. Now, I was really close to my other cousin Jasmine before she went up north. She told me that life would be good there, so I wanted to go too. I couldn't stay in Mississippi no longer, so I found as much money as I could working for the nice white folk in town, which there weren't that many. Mm-hmm. And I'd help clean their house and move their things. Sometimes I'd even bring stuff to the market for them. I saved up for months and months before I finally had enough money to buy a train ticket. Now, I wanted my parents to go with me, but they couldn't find a way to leave the lifestyle. They had been working on the farm since they were little, and they knew no other way of life, and they knew they couldn't survive up north. Me, I got up to level 8, so I decided, hey, this is my only chance. I packed up my things, and I left. Now, my oldest brother, he told me about the train rides whenever he wrote to me. He told me that I better know where I was going because if I didn't, I'd end up in the same bad situation as him. He was considered a hobo. He lived on the freight trains going from one car to the next, hopping from town to town, hoping to find work, food, and shelter. Even the other white hobos looked down on him just because he was dark. Everyone looked down on him like that, and the whites never included him, which made him feel lonely. He was an outcast among the outcasts. I didn't want none of that stuff to happen to me, so I made sure that Jasmine knew that I wanted to go live with her. As soon as I got the mail saying that it was okay, I hopped on the train and I never looked back. The segregation on railroads was a part of the development in the Jim Crow South. The Railroad Car Law in 1900 was the first official law mandating segregation in trains. At the time, blacks and whites still rode on the same railroad cars, but sometimes the whites would force the blacks to go on the special cars or go on the smoking cars, even if it wasn't necessary. I went as far as the back train as I possibly could, and I kept my head down so I couldn't bother nobody. We were surrounded by curtain just to keep our presence as minimal as possible. We were forced to even give up our seats sometimes just because the whites wanted it or they felt like switching. Now, after hours of sitting silent on the train, we finally got to Chicago. My cousin Jasmine was waiting for me at the station. She greeted me with a big old hug and she grabbed one of my bags. Now, she didn't have a car or nothing, so we had a long trip to the city. After we got there, our tiring trip, we ended up in a black neighborhood where we found Jasmine's apartment. It wasn't just hers, though. She shared it with 6 other people, making me number 7. It was crowded and messy, but I didn't care none of that stuff because I was just so happy to be there. We lived in this place called the Black Belt in the south side of Chicago. I settled in and began looking for a job. The community was filled with people like me, but across the river was the white community. On July 27, 1919, the biggest conflict I had ever seen took place. A 17-year-old black boy was swimming over to the other side, and many white men did not want him in their territory, so they drowned the poor boy. The blacks on my side became angry after the policemen refused to arrest the whites who drowned him. This started a huge riot called the Chicago Race Riots in 1919. Both groups began throwing rocks at each other and fighting. 26 houses were burned down. Whites fired shotguns and hurled bricks, and they aimed to hunt and kill every black person that they saw. This lasted for more than a week before the state militia ended it. 23 blacks and 15 whites were killed, and many, many more were injured. Now, me, personally, I didn't want to be in the middle of that, so I sat under my table with my head between my knees, praying that nothing was going to happen to me. I stayed there for a long time before it finally ended. This was a moment that would scar me, something I would remember for the rest of my life. Now, I recall during the Great Depression, jobs were really scarce. Whites started praying for even the menial jobs that us blacks would usually get. At the time, unemployment reached up to 50% in the black community. Sadly, one of the ways of the land was the brutal practice of lynching. In many cities, whites demanded that they were given the first crack at any job opening due to the virtue of their skin color. Some even went as far as to revive the lynchings as a way of intimidating employers and African Americans looking for work. The New Republic, reporting on the increase of the number of lynchings, observed that dead men not only tell no tales, but they create vacancies. We'd always get through it though by singing our new music, the blues. It got popular around the 1930s. My favorite song was That's Why I'm Crying by Coco Taylor. You have someone new, but I still in love with you, that's why I'm crying. Lucky for me though, during that horrible time, I had work. I didn't get paid much, but working as a maid never really does. During the Great Depression, married women were prohibited from stealing jobs from men because they already had a man to take care of them. Single women though, they could get the women's work, and they'd have small, low-paying jobs like nurses or sales girls. Now the black women, they were even more restricted. They had to serve the maids and cooks like me. I worked for a mean old white lady, but I respected her, and little by little, she became nicer to me. I worked for her for 7 years before I began working at the factory, which was part of why I moved up north, the Industrial Revolution. It wasn't as glamorous as I had expected, but it was better than picking cotton. Times have changed, and life has gotten better since the 1900s. And they continue to get better. But I will always remember the experiences I encountered and the places that I explored to get me to where I am.